right, good evening and welcome to the interim meeting of the school board of the school district of Springfield Township. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Reading of the mission statement. The mission of the school district of Springfield Township is to educate and develop all students as learners and citizens who are high achieving, resilient, and responsible in a changing global community. Roll call.
Mr. Bedard.
Here.
Mr. DeFranco.
Here.
Dr. Edlin. Here. Mr. Jordan. Mr. Lapidus. Mr. Nagelman.
Here.
Ms. Sarsfield.
Here.
Dr. Karatowski.
Announcements. The board at its discretion may videotape all or any portion of the public board meeting subject to the limitations set forth in policy 006.2 broadcasting of meetings. Board meetings will be broadcast on Friday afternoon following the board meeting. At this time, we'll allow for public comments on agenda items only. These are items that are on the current agenda this evening. And we will have a total of 30 minutes for this period. We would ask that anyone who is speaking try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes so that we can allow everyone who wants to speak. And when you come to the microphone, if you could please share your name and your address where you live in the township. Okay. Do we have someone?
What's up for a presentation?
Yeah. So.
Can't hear online?
Okay. Are they not hearing us online?
Dr. Turkey, we don't have trouble hearing you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that.
We appreciate that. We're gonna work on that.
Give us 1 minute. We're gonna see if we can make that come through online. Test.
Michael.
Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Stop.
You want to start the Zoom with ending the meeting. Somebody.
Test 1 2.
Okay.
Test 1 2.
It's the MPA report
Yeah.
on the agenda later.
I can put it up. Okay, we got online? Good, okay. So I apologize if there was any portion of that that was missed by our online attendees. We will have public comments on agenda items. We'll have a total of 30 minutes for this. So we ask that those who wish to speak would keep their comments to 3 minutes so that we have enough time to get everyone in. And when you come to the microphone to speak, if you could please state your name and where you live in the township. We will also be taking, there's folks who signed up online for to speak on agenda items. And we'll be calling on those folks too. Okay.
All right, and I'm going to go ahead and call names based on who signed up, and I'll be the friendly timekeeper as well. Keep us on track. So first up, we had Mr. Kevin Duger. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. Mr. Kevin Duger. Oh, okay. I don't see online. Next up is Ms. Parsons.
Is that an agenda item though?
Sorry, yeah, Ms. Parsons, you signed up for both agenda and non-agenda?
Is she, are you online? She's online.
Oh, she is?
Yeah. So.
Can you hear me?
I can. Ms. Parsons, you signed up for both an agenda and non-agenda, and.
Yes, I wasn't sure whether I could make it or I was going to do it at home. So that's why I signed up for both. I wanted to make sure I was included.
Okay, Ms. Parsons, this is a comment time for items that are on the agenda right now.
Okay,
know-
I can wait till the end.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. No problem.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next up is Mr. Casulo.
That online? Is he online? Here?
Here?
Yes, come
Yep.
on up. Mhm.
Hi, how are you?
Have a seat.
My name's Damian Chisulo. I'm a lifetime resident of Springfield Township. I'm a parent of a middle school student. I live in Orland. I'm a doctor of chiropractic with 21 years experience. I have a advanced fellowship in pediatric chiropractic. I'm here to speak out against the assurance testing protocol. I think our goal at the end of this moment tonight should be either a no vote, in my opinion, primary a no vote to continue with the plan as Dr. Yannicone outlined in August. I think you're doing a great job. You should deserve a round of applause and not shoehorn in new testing. I don't think it's warranted, and I'll support that this evening. I think we must, if you're going to get into the business of practicing medicine, you must include an opt-out clause. I'll support that as well. And then minimally, I would also offer to lend my knowledge and expertise to an open panel. I don't feel like Dr. Rabin has addressed any of the concerns that I've been emailing you with all week in that last call, which I could not attend because of work. And so I would like to engage in the next couple of weeks with an open moderated panel where we can discuss the science of this and the merits of my concerns. A few summary points. So this is absolutely a medical procedure. Medical procedures come in all sizes and shapes. If you did this in your doctor's office, it would fall under CPT code 87426. It's sticking a swab in the orifice of a person. That is a medical procedure. You're engaging in the practice of medicine. Some summary points here. Springfield Township now has the lowest rates. We all know there's no cases in the middle school currently. There's one case in the high school or thereabouts as of my last reading. I don't think we need to be searching for increased layers of testing. I think we're doing just great. There are plenty of sports programs, point two, that have operated over the last year. I've interviewed several officials about this. Not a single one has told me they had to shut down because of SARS-CoV-2 spread during the application of their programming. Springfield Township just completed St. Genevieve's, completed the girls volleyball season with over 60 participants in the 5th to 8th grade range. Not a single incident. Masks were worn during not during competition. Fans were there. We were in smaller, more cramped, less ventilated buildings, and there was not a single incident in the entire league. Point three, there is no provision for opt-out. This is a big deal. Dr. Yannicone, in our personal email to me, thank you for being so forthright with our back and forth, Dr. Yannicone, that it would be too hard to administrate having an opt-out clause because you'd have some students who could opt out, some students who weren't opting out, and that's too difficult to monitor. Hogwash. Teachers are phenomenal at that. They are excellent, dare I say, experts at understanding the different needs of students in a situation and coming to the needs of those students. We're going to test these few opt out. They do that every day. They're awesome at that. They can pull that off on a basketball team of 12 kids.
30 more seconds, thanks.
The CDC says already that 40% in this age cohort have been infected naturally with SARS-CoV-2 and have acquired immunity. I've sent the board 96 peer-reviewed literature statements supporting the robust, durable, and long-lasting efficacy of natural immunity. You should allow these kids to opt out. Next step, this provision is practicing medicine. You're getting in the way of the doctor-patient relationship, something that I hold sacred. I gave you practical real-life examples of students in this township who would be forced to go against their doctor's orders were you to do a yes vote on this. That is a big deal. You are now getting in the way of the doctor-patient relationship and making them make a decision on that.
Thank you, sir.
Couple
Time-
more
Time
points.
is up for that comment.
Say again?
Time is up. It's a 3-minute limit.
I have 3 minutes, I have 3 minutes next on the list. You can have them.
I ask that everybody hold applause. This is not a presentation. It's not a performance. This is a public meeting. Please hold applause, okay? I'm going to ask you to please hold your applause.
And I'm sorry,
To speak to the point of order, that young lady registered to speak. She's going to yield her time to me. Is that okay?
That's fine.
is
I
that,
think I should be done before her 3 minutes.
I
yeah,
did
I'm
do
just,
that
okay.
I allowed that for the last meeting, so.
The school board is opting, my next point, there are two more points and I'll conclude. The next point is that we have chosen as a township to implement the Binex Now testing by Abbott Labs. This is a faulty test. I've sent you all information regarding that, both the FDA. So I want to tell you how they break it down. So I sent you a CDC study and I linked that for you guys. And it says the Binex Now test can miss up to 2/3 of asymptomatic cases. I'll say that again. It can miss up to 2/3 of asymptomatic tests. That's from the CDC. Now, how do they rate their efficacy? They said its highest efficacy, the Binex Now test, it's an interpretive test. It's not binary. It's not yes or no. It's interpretive. So what they said was you get the worst efficacy when it is self-administered. That's what we're trying to do. You get the best efficacy of the test when it's performed by a healthcare practitioner. I think that would be probably pretty obvious, right? So we're going to get the lowest standard of excellence in using an already faulty test. Second, did you know, I emailed you this information. Did you know the specificity and reliability of these tests actually go down in communities of low transmission? So de facto, that means Springfield Township would have the worst rates in the county for applying this tool as an indicator of presence of SARS-CoV-2. We would have the worst results by the definition of how the FDA measures this. Make sure I have all this right. The only way you can raise the efficacy, the only way the FDA says you can raise the efficacy is a term called serial testing. What this means is instead of doing a one-off test, we're advocating once a week testing, random. What serial testing is and what the product says you should do is either everyday testing or in a series. So you would test 3 days in a row. We're not doing that. We're improperly applying a bad test. One more point and I close. One thing that has not changed is the science in this whole process. This age cohort, what we're talking about, the CDC and the FDA both say that 1 in 100,000 children in this age cohort have the risk of being hospitalized by SARS-CoV-2. Chances of dying in this age cohort is 1 in 1 million. Now, what this means is when the CDC assembles these numbers, they look at all children, the sickest and the healthiest. We're not. We're talking about athletes. They don't have underlying health comorbidities. So our denominator in this would be a fraction of that fraction. I'll now close. As parents, we assess risk every day. We participate in sports, we sign waivers, we acknowledge the risk of COVID, we acknowledge the risk of concussion, we acknowledge the risk that our child may be injured or even die on the field of play or in practice. We're okay with this risk. We sign this, and in my house, we willingly accept this risk. I have not talked to a single parent this week that wants this testing, that wants this added layer of testing. I don't think there's a reason to implement it. I think our numbers are really low. I think current standards are doing well. I think you're getting in the business of practicing medicine, and that's where I draw a hard line in the sand. We've never done forced medical procedures, mandates that don't allow for opt-out clauses, and I have a problem with that. I thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if you're going, I'm gonna ask you to leave. I will ask you to leave.
I'm sorry.
Next up, we have Mr. Michael Parsons.
Hello, Michael Parsons, 1603 Brent Road. Pretty much Damien summed it up. There's really nothing more I can say. I am a little on the taken back side. I think that a lot of the kids are going to be confused by the fact that Dr. Yannicka on August 3rd at the board meeting on minute 56, second 40, he made a few bold statements during the health and safety plan that was on the agenda. But you quoted, English teacher, school teacher, not scientist, not doctor. We are not going to engage in any on-campus testing. Some parents, you stated, asked a question about randomly testing kids, and your response was absolutely not. And after that, your response, I quote, I don't believe that's the job of educators, and that's what we do for a living, educate. My daughter's scared to death to get a false positive. She'll miss 10 days of school. There is no online classes for her. If she misses the 10 days, she is a 4.2 student at this school. It will devastate her. She wants to play basketball. She's a great basketball player. She plays softball for this school. She is a great asset to this school. It's ultimately up to her if she wants to do the testing, but I don't think she will. I think she's more afraid of missing school. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I'm going to ask that you escort anyone out that's applauding. It's just disrupting the flow of the meeting, and I really would appreciate if you did not. I'm asking you. I'm asking that you please not
You're
applaud.
being more disruptive by not allowing us to acknowledge agreement.
And that's fine. You can
wasting
agree
time.
with
Go
him.
on.
We are not, I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep decorum in this meeting, and I would appreciate that there not be applause. If you do applaud, I'm going to ask Mr. Craig to please escort you out.
And I'll remain in my seat, as is my right.
Let's go to Mr. Scott May.
It is a public meeting, but there are. Okay, well, if you show me where it's posted that I can't acknowledge agreement with someone says, last time I looked, that's America. America.
Hi, folks. I'm Scott May. I live at 1511 Lucan. First and foremost, I'm not going to waste 3 minutes now because Dr. Chisulo took all my points and made them very, very well. I would really just like to say I agree 100% with him, and I implore and ask you all to vote no as the proposals are currently stated, and ask the administration to do better for our kids, to do better for our families. All the points that he raised are certainly valid, and I know there's a lot of smart people in that administration that can come up with the ways, even if it's simply wearing a mask, letting the kids opt out if they want. But right now, we're in a place in this world where our families, right here in this community, they need a sense of normalcy. They need to get back to going and doing things that they did in the past and not feel abnormal. And I know we can do it safely. There's one middle school case of COVID right now. I mean, if we get to a point where things are off the rail and getting crazy again, maybe it would be something to write in to reconsider. But right now, it's just too inconsistent. The contact tracing rules, I was on the Zoom meeting last time. They're very confusing. I mean, right now, I have a son that is home because of contact tracing, perfectly healthy, doesn't show a sign. He has to miss 10 days of school. It's stressful and it's very tough on our family, and the families in the community deserve this to be a little bit better. The folks that get home because of the contact tracing when they may not be sick, that's not warranted. And it was confusing. The administration, we had a lot of probablys and maybes. It's tough to comprehend and understand how these are going to go down. And I know we can absolutely do better. The consistency of the program. Some sports are getting tested like basketball. Some contact sports like water polo apparently are not. It's just very, very inconsistent. I know we can go back and do better. So I hope and really ask you all to really consider going back to the table and just getting a better plan that can be better for the whole community. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next up is Ms. Michelle Casatas.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Michelle Chisitis. I've lived in Orland. I'm in Springfield Township for 27 years. I live in Orland Mill Road. My comment tonight is, again, with Dr. Chisulo. I can never say your name right. Chisulo, thank you. I couldn't ever say it better than he did. But kind of on the coattail of that, you've had people come here and implore your consideration and implore you to look harder into things. My question is that I don't feel like any of the time talking about wasting time in these meetings. The parents you've asked for audits, you've asked for questionnaires.
Mrs. Chasadis, is this regarding
Yes.
an item on the agenda?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
on the SWOT, yes.
Okay.
So my question or my comment to you is that parents have been given questionnaires, they've been given audits, they've been given all this stuff, yet it's already been decided and it's already been determined. And so what can you share with us that says that this isn't already a done deal?
So the item for the plan for the health and safety plan, this proposal is on the agenda tonight. When that is addressed, we will address those questions.
So no decision has been made yet.
No decision has been made. This is a voting meeting, so the plan will be presented as part of Dr. Yannickone's superintendent report, and then there is an item on the agenda that requires the vote of the board. So
Okay.
we will hear the presentation, we will listen to the details, the information that has been gathered to support the recommendations that the administration is making, and the board will then consider them and vote on it. later
And
in
how
the
mu,
meeting.
how will the comments of the families and the parents of the students weigh in on that?
Well, we're hearing them right now. We're listening to them. We
Okay.
hear the-
No,
we hear the
listening and
concerns.
weighing in, that's my question. How much weight will that carry?
We're listening to those concerns. Both Dr. Chisulo and Mr. May have emailed the board. There's been communication. I have read the materials that have been provided. So all of that information is under consideration. And as we hear the plan and then we move to voting, all of that information will be considered. We have not only the information that the individuals here are presenting, we also have the entire township to consider and the rest of the school, the high school, and all of those students who participate in that. So we see that this is a representation of the thoughts of the folks in the community, and we will take those under consideration.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I have Mr. Stephen Deverin.
Hi, Stephen Heaven, 1213 Bergen Road. Sorry, my handwriting wasn't great. I just had a question around one of the agenda items on the water basin and on the air testing that was there. From what I read in the agenda items, it just wasn't clear what it was about. So I was just looking for kind of an explanation and some background on what those two were about.
Absolutely. I'm actually going to ask Mr. Thorne, he's our Director of Facilities, if he wouldn't mind coming up to the microphone, and then he can answer those questions. There's actually 5 property agenda items, but I want to clarify. You want clarification on
The water basin?
the retention basin and the air quality. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So the water retention basin was part of the high school renovation project. We are required by the Montgomery County Conservation District to implement stormwater practices. We originally installed the basin. Unfortunately, it failed their testing. They come back and actually test the soils, how it drains, and unfortunately it failed. So we had to modify what was going on there, add additional under drainage, put in amended soils. So that's what the whole renovation of the basin is about. So, and I'm sorry, the second question?
The air monitoring? Air quality monitoring?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's okay.
The DEP runs an air monitoring station, and they have for several years. It's located right next to the administration building. It was originally put in for possibly to help the middle school science departments use those air samples and run experiments. Again, I think it's the second term, 5-year term, so it's been probably 10 years or so that they're doing this. Again, it's just routine. They come, the DEP comes and checks the canister. They come and replace the canister, the air sampler, every day, 365 days a year. So that's what it's about. I hope that helped.
Mr. Heverin, I hope that answered your question. Okay.
And Mr. Heaven, if you want to complete your comment, you do have more time. Okay, very good.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask if everyone in the audience could please keep your masks on. If you need to take a mask break, you're welcome to walk outside and do that. Okay, thank you.
That is all the signups that we had in the room. I missed anyone, please raise your hand, but I think I got everyone.
Okay, is there anybody?
Can I comment? I got here a couple minutes late. Kevin Duger, is my name.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, Kevin, we called you before.
Did you, Mr. Duger, were you able to find the agenda?
Is it this one right here?
Yes, there is a copy of the agenda right there. So it would be, yeah, so this period is for comments on agenda items only?
Yes.
Okay, and so, but if there's other comments, then they would be at the end.
No, it's right. It's on the agenda.
Okay.
You want me to sign now?
You're
No, you
fine.
don't have to sign. No, I just wanted to make sure you found I know I saw on your comment that you. couldn't
Yes,
find the
I did.
agenda.
I
wanted
did.
to make
Yes,
sure
thank
that
you.
did.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can I put my mask down just to talk?
Just to
All right.
talk, yes.
So-
But if everybody else could keep.
All
their
right,
masks up, I'd
fantastic. So
appreciate
I've never been to a school board meeting before. I've never been in politics before. In the last year and a half, like many people, it's invoked a lot of passion and different thoughts. The one thing I'm here more as representing, I think, the friends that I have in the school district and families, just from the perspective that I feel like there's a fear of speaking out about certain things. And I would just ask the school board
So
to,
what's the agenda item? that you're
yes, sorry, the
speaking
safety
on? I'm
plan,
sorry,
the
I
safety
know.
plan that is on
Okay.
the
you.
docket for the vote
Mhm.
this evening.
Sure.
And I wanted to be able to have a voice in this and at least put out there that I think parents are basically asking that you do a more diligent effort. And I'll go so far as to say a better job in thinking about alternatives rather than putting out some of these things that ultimately I think would potentially cost, parents money if they're going to have to stay home from contact tracing for kids that are potentially or purportedly exposed to this virus. I think the consequential damages need to be thought about. And so just as somebody that's lived in the township and I live on Glendalough Road, I would ask the board to think about the decisions that you're about to make tonight are going to affect a lot of families and a lot of things that those families need to do to plan both for the health and the financial success of their family. So please, hopefully these comments tonight resonate with you all and that no decisions have been made thus far.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you were here, Mr. Duger, but I did explain, I think Mrs. Sadis asked, how would we be making that decision? The plan will be presented tonight along with all of the information that the administration has gathered to support the recommendations that they're making. So that will be part of the information that's shared tonight. And then there is an item on the voting agenda tonight that the board will consider and make a vote on that. So that
Is
will
that-
happen later on this evening.
Can I, one last question too, more out of curiosity, is it an open vote or is it closed and nobody knows how anybody votes?
No, it's an open vote. The board will vote in person here in the open,
Okay.
so you'll know how everyone votes.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is the opportunity to comment on agenda items, and I believe Mr. Parsons, I believe that you already did comment on that. So, okay. There is no other comment period. No, it's that when there is a voting time, then there is a comment period after all the agenda items have been covered, which is an open comment period. And during the time that the board votes, it's an opportunity for the board to make comments or ask questions on that, but that is not open to the public at that time. Okay. Is there anyone else on the, or anyone
Yes,
else online?
Ms. Joan Parsons has raised your hand and Ms. Parsons, I think we talked before about commenting at the end, unless you do have an agenda item comment.
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got
Yes.
you.
Okay, great. Thanks for taking my call, Joan Parsons, Orland. Okay, I was under the impression that out of 22 schools, 20 are looking to do this type of tests on the children for sports, and 2 are not. Is that still the case?
So, Mrs. Parsons, we're going to go over the whole plan in a few minutes. Dr. Yannicone is going to go over that, and she'll cover that information within the presentation.
Okay, so I have 3 minutes. So another thing I would like to know is, with all the money that's given to all the different townships and the schools, are you getting paid money if you comply 100% to this type of testing? Do you get money from whatever it is, the CARES Act or whatever? Is there something coming to you for you to be 100% compliant on the testing of the children, since this is a recommendation from the CDC for the for your schools? I would like to know that.
Okay, so there is no payment for testing students. I believe that a couple of meetings ago, rather, Dr. Yannicone went over the ESSER funds, which are the funds that come to the school districts regarding the COVID relief funds. And I believe that that information was shared with you about how those monies are being spent. So, and the use of monies regarding testing is not an item on the agenda this evening. So if you would like to comment any further on that, we're happy to entertain that at the end of the meeting.
Okay, so I guess I would end with that you're going to then tell us before the vote whether the other two schools are going to be compliant? Is
So
that what you're saying?
Dr. Yannicone will go over all of the information when she does the presentation on the health and safety plan.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, we're approaching our 30-minute time mark, I believe.
Yeah, that was
Is
the
there anybody else?
last,
Okay.
the last hand that we had up.
All right,
So
good.
I think
Thank
we're
you.
good to move in.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments. We appreciate the time for that. We're at letter C, reports and information. And this will be a property committee meeting report, Mr. Needleman.
Thank you. By Zoom on the thank you. Sorry, I should know that by now. We met on the morning of Thursday, October 28th. And if you'll permit me just a quick personal indulgence, I just want to offer congratulations to Mr. Thorne and belated congratulations to Mr. Wexler. I don't see him here. Both their families welcome new additions recently. So congratulations, Mr. Thorne. Congratulations, Mr. Wexler. Present at the, applause is appropriate, I guess. Present at the meeting were Gretchen Saplinski, Jeff Bedard, myself, Dr. Yannicone, Mr. Thorne, Ms. Michaels, Ms. Braun, and we had a member of the public, Mary Ellen Reeves. Thank you for joining us. We discussed a number of things, so forgive me, I'll try to talk quickly so we don't relate too much, but there are a number of things to go through. Mr. Thorne was kind enough before to go through a little bit about the stormwater retention basin and some of the modifications. That's one of the capital projects that is currently underway. I know we've been talking about this before in various meetings and at various board meetings and various property committee meetings. That process is underway. Existing vegetation has been cleared and has begun in the basin. The project is expected to be completed in about 2 to 3 weeks. A change order to the original high school contract will be needed, as well as filing a plan document acknowledging that the change orders are going to exceed about $300,000. So now this change order is a requirement of the department, the PDE, the Department of Environment, and the plan program. This is the last modification. Once this is done, the high school project will be closed. Yay. And we'll go on to other things. The turf fields and the bus garage, as we've talked about before, this is an ongoing issue. The turf fields have been repaired. They've been restretched, but the bus garage facility continues to be subject to vulnerable to flood. So we've got to figure out what to do there. In the meantime, the bus garage facility has been cleaned and dried out. We're working now with the insurance carrier to replace all the damaged items, and there is a crack that has been found that we've got to figure out how to repair, and that's on the list of ongoing things. Right? The township and PennDOT have responded to concerns that we've raised about the intersection. Excuse me. Do you believe people think me to talk? I couldn't think of that word. And the stormwater drains and piping have been investigated for potential issues. We're working on that as well. The bus garage is also in need of some rather significant repair. Parts of the roof need to be replaced, other parts need to be repaired, but it all needs to be done. So we're going forward with reviewing the structural integrity. We're going to get that report from our engineer, and we'll decide how to move forward based on that. The middle school is also in need of roof replacement, and this is over the 3rd story classroom part of the building. The recommendation is that a construction team begin developing specifications for replacement to go out for bid as early as possible. We're looking for a summer start to that replacement process. We talked about this a little bit before. I'm sorry, is there a question? Oh, okay, never mind. We talked about this a little bit before. We're going to need to modify the custodial service contract in order to keep our custodial services at the level that we need them to be, to make sure that our schools are cleaned. The company we use, Interstate, is continuing to have issues with staffing and things like that. So we're going to have to modify the contract sooner rather than later. I dropped my pen. Once that contract modification is ready, it'll be presented, but this was something we talked about a couple weeks ago, and it's here, maybe sooner than everybody expected, but it's here. Lastly, the Enfield Athletic Project. This is the old Enfield that's going to be raised. We are getting there. Yay. There's going to be a closing ceremony for the old school. Right now, we're looking at sometime in January or February of 2022, and there'll be an opportunity for members of the public to go through the old Enfield and take a look through, tour the grounds, that sort of thing. We are also going to be undergoing a process where we can auction parts of the school, some of the tiles and things like that, and members of the public have, of course, expressed interest in being able to bid on some of those items, so that's underway. In the meantime, the construction contractors are going to be removing some of the hazardous material, which is a big project. Asbestos, as we all know, is very hard to get contained and get rid of and all of that, so that's underway as well. Finally, the raising of the school itself. We have a target of starting in the spring. That whole construction project will be completed, we anticipate, in October of 2022. Are there any questions? With that, I'll close.
I actually have a question. Did you discuss, you mentioned about the Pico and the intersection, or PennDOT and the intersection, sorry. Is that the intersection of Montgomery and Peeper Mill? Is that the one? you
Of
talked about?
Montgomery and Peeper Mill, it is, but
Yeah.
I misspoke if I said that. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah, we've not gotten, it's on the agenda, but we've
okay.
not gotten
Not gotten there yet.
substantive
Okay.
information on that yet.
All right, good.
So.
Thank you.
Forgive me.
All right. Any other questions from the board for? Thank you, Mr. Niederman. We actually do have, I think, signed up Angela Beal Tawfiq to do an MPA report. I don't know if Angela, if you're online or in person. Hi, come on up.
Yes, hello and greetings. From Angel Beal Tawfiq, 525 East Willow Grove Avenue, Glenside, PA. The MPA has once again is preparing for our forthcoming New Year celebrations. We had the opportunity to meet with the secondary PST, our secondary PTA, as well as our elementary PTA. And as we prepare in February, of course, we'll be having our planning for our annual Black History Month celebration. But during we're building the mentoring parent program. And so we thank Dr. Yannicone for her willingness to be able to look into family collaborations for translating school materials for secondary ESL families through those collaborative relationships. We also look forward to in the new year preparing for our forthcoming financial ceremony workshops, our water safety planning workshops, and our physical activity jump rope for heart and other events that are coming in the forthcoming year. And we look forward to everyone and all families being in attendance. And that's the MPA report. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Okay, we're up to D, that's administrative reports, and I'll invite Dr. Yannicone for the superintendent's report.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to begin by wishing everyone a belated happy Halloween. I hope that festivities over the weekend were fun for our students and their families who celebrate. On Friday, we were thrilled to return to the parade tradition at our 2 elementary buildings and our costume contest at the middle school. The students and their teachers did a terrific job of celebrating, and it was really nice to see so many families join us to watch the parade. I also had the pleasure of joining local leaders at yesterday's Erdenheim Civic Association Pet Parade and Costume Contest, where a number of our students entered their pets. It was nice to see the students outside of school. We also want to congratulate the girls soccer team for their District 1 2A championship last week, and the golf team for winning the Suburban League championship. We'd also like to congratulate our cross-country teams participants in the District 1 championship. We have 3 runners advancing to the PIAA state finals this week. And our boys soccer team is playing right now at Radnor in the district semifinals, and our water polo teams will play in the all-state team championships next weekend. So our fall season athletes have been very busy. We wish all of our athletes good luck as they move forward. For our families at Enfield, we actually just received great news that PennDOT has just approved the flashing warning device permit plan. This is the next important step in the process to bring slower traffic and safer crossing around Enfield during arrival and dismissal. So we'll continue to work, Mr. Thorne will continue to work with the township to move forward on that project. We have 2 resignations on the agenda under personnel, which I would like to highlight. Kim Pierce has been with the district for 6 years and has served as our PIMS coordinator. That's the Pennsylvania Information Management System. Kim is an exceptional person who has been a gift to all of us. She is highly skilled and responsible for all governmental and educational data reports. Her attention to detail and collaboration with her colleagues has been exceptional. Lauren Patterson Davis has been with the district for 15 years. She formerly served as principal of the middle school and more recently as director of support services. Lauren has been integral to the development of the MTSS program, and she has worked tirelessly with our clinical teams to ensure mental health supports and other essential needs for families. Since the start of the pandemic, Lauren has done a fantastic job coordinating services such as the vaccine clinic last spring, food services to families last summer, and making countless other connections for families in need. We wish both Kim and Lauren the very best as they prepare to move forward in their careers. Families of students in grades K through 12 were emailed an invitation to participate in our equity quality review this week by attending discussion sessions with representatives from the University of Pennsylvania. There are affinity groups meeting Tuesday and Wednesday night virtually, and in-person sessions at Erdenheim Library on Thursday afternoon and evening for all community members. We welcome everyone to attend and share your thoughts on ways we can continue to improve in service to all students, staff, and families in our community. Recently, there have been several instances in neighboring districts regarding inquiries from members of the community raising concerns about books in their school libraries. While I have only had 2 inquiries since I joined the district in 2018, I decided to review our policies and procedures with our librarians and Dr. Johnston last week. We are very fortunate to have 4 full-time librarians working in our schools who are dedicated to serving all of our students and to providing windows into many diverse communities living here in Springfield and around the world. We have approximately 69,000 titles, 7,500 at Enfield, 20,000 at Erdenheim, 15,000 at the middle school, and 26,000 at the high school. When our budget allows for the librarians to expand and refine their collections, as Board Policy 109.1 suggests, they consult reputable, unbiased professional selection aids, including School Library Journal, Book List, Kirkus Reviews, Publishers Weekly, and Hornbook. They also consult with our students and teachers on books they have read that may have connections to our school curriculum. They use our Follett Destiny Library Management System to collect and review circulation of materials. They are also active members of the American Library Association, the Pennsylvania Library Association, and the MCIU Librarians Network. Book challenges are not a new phenomenon, but they have grown in attention in recent weeks. We have policy 109.1.
I'm sorry, Dr. Yannicone, I'm having difficulty hearing you. I would just, if there are comments from the community that's here in person, welcome to make them at our agenda, comments on non-agenda items at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
We have policy 109.1, which addresses the selection of resource materials. And we also have an AR for this policy, or administrative regulation, that focuses on our process for challenging materials by members of the community. It is important that these policies and procedures exist to provide direction for our staff and administration and to allow members of the community to raise concerns as needed. It is also important that we as a community continue to support the inherent dignity of all persons and to uphold the equity vision adopted by the board. Book banning has a painful history, and we actually teach that lesson to our students in the 9th grade. All parents and guardians play a major role in guiding their child's reading and library use. Each family has the right to determine which library resources are acceptable for its children and must accord the same right to other parents. Alternative reading options can and will be provided to families upon request. Any member of the community who would like to know if any of our libraries carries a particular title can access that information by selecting the school on our website, the top of the page, select the library tab for that school, and then select the Follett Destiny tab. You can then enter any title and it will tell you whether we carry the book, if it's checked out, and provide links to additional information, reviews of the book, the reading level, awards it may have received. I hope this information is helpful to our board members and the community in understanding the work of our librarians, who are there to help our students find books that provide interest and engagement, support their studies in core subject areas, and their passion for reading and learning. Okay, and at this time, we're going to move to our spotlight, which is the presentation of the Winter Health and Safety Plan. And I'd like to invite Mr. Jason Payne, our Assistant Principal and Middle School Athletic Director, to come up to the table. He and I are going to share in the presentation. So, Mr. Coughlin, can I share my screen? I'm good to go. Okay, great. Okay, so can you just confirm for me that people can see the screen? Yes? Okay, great. And everybody out there can see it? Okay, because sometimes Mr. Thorne will turn down the lights if it's easier for you to see the screen. Okay. All right, so first of all, I'm just going to begin with the goals of the plan. When we started reviewing this process for the Winter Health and Safety Plan, these were our core goals. We want to continue to maintain the health and safety of our student athletes, their families, and our staff. Throughout this pandemic, that's been our primary goal. We want to continue to provide layered mitigation strategies under the guidance of the Office of Public Health. The county office, as we mentioned in other meetings, we prioritize the county office ahead of other offices because they are most localized to our community and the unique needs of our community. We want to provide the opportunity for student athletes to maximize their participation in sports in the least restrictive manner possible. More on that in a little bit. We want to minimize the risk of suspending team participation in practices and competitions. And we want to, and by suspension, that's what I mean if there were like an outbreak, not kids doing things that they shouldn't be doing, just if there were an outbreak. And we want to provide the opportunity for families and fans to attend competitions safely in support of our student athletes in schools. Last week, I had the pleasure of meeting with about 25 of our high school student athletes. I asked them, what are your priorities? And essentially they had two priorities. One was they'd like to play out without masks, and the other is that they'd like their fans to be able to cheer them on in the gym or in the pool area. They were their number 1 and 2 concerns. So we agree with that. We want them to be comfortable. We want them to be safe. We want them to have a good time and a great season. As one of the parents mentioned, to the extent possible, we want them to have a normal experience in athletics this year. Okay.
None of this is normal. None of this is normal.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If this is not the opportunity, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is not an opportunity for you to speak. You may speak at the end of the meeting.
I've been in this township.
You may speak at the end of the meeting. Mr. Thorne, can you please escort him out? Thank you. I'm sorry. Can we just please allow Dr. Yannicone and Mr. Payne to continue with the plan? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Payne, I think you're going to take over with side 2.
So we have a plan to have masks be worn during indoor activities when riding the bus to and from contests, while in locker rooms, during the use of the weight room or fitness centers, and team meeting rooms that occur indoors, and while on the sidelines during contests. So effectively in reverse, the athletes that are competing would be unmasked. Everyone else would be masked. The current guidance does not recommend that masks should be worn while outdoors. Therefore, we will not require masking while outside. Some of our winter sports may choose to do some conditioning outside so that students could get a mask break and do so without masks. As masking recommendations and mandates are adjusted by the county Office of Public Health and or the governor, we would adapt to stay in compliance. Screening and monitoring. This is similar to what we have been doing in both the middle school and the high school, having self-monitoring happen on our campuses, and athletes would notify coaches, staff, administration, the nurse's office, if it was during the school day, immediately if they're experiencing any signs or symptoms of illness. Cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, and ventilation. This is again going to stay the same from what we have been doing in our other health and safety plans for sports. Frequent washing and hand sanitizing. We would have the sanitation stations available at the places of practice or competition. HVAC would stay on per the normal school day routine, and filters would be changed as needed to ensure clean airflow. And the school district would utilize EPA approved disinfectants against COVID-19, as well as disinfectants containing hydrogen peroxide and or alcohol.
So this is where obviously there's a lot of difference of opinion about a change in our winter health and safety plan as compared to our fall and previous spring health and safety plan. And I appreciate that. I want to say, up front, I've had interactions with Mr. May multiple times over email in the last 10 days. I appreciate the conversation that we've had. I respect parents who have reached out to me on both sides. And I actually have had parents reach out to me in support of testing being added as a layered mitigation measure for the winter. I also appreciate Dr. Chisulo's passion for this and advocacy for his position. The board has a difficult decision tonight. I understand that, I respect that, and we will follow through on whatever you decide. I'm going to explain to you as best I can why our health team, which included our school nurses, our athletic directors, our building principals, and myself, came to this recommendation. It is a recommendation. I want to clarify for Mrs. Parsons, there is no payment for this. It is not a requirement. There's no grant funding for this. This is strictly a recommendation that is provided to us by the Office of Public Health locally, the Montgomery County Office of Public Health, and CHOPS Policy Lab, who have been working with superintendents across the district since the start of the pandemic. So we meet weekly, and each week they provide us updates and information, and then we, as in our roles, do the best we can to bring that information back to our teams and to try to make good decisions on behalf of our students. So while we may disagree, I fully respect your positions, your parents, and your members of the community. You have every right to voice your concerns to the board, and the board, hopefully will make whatever decision they believe is best. All right. So with regard to the assurance testing, it's currently the recommended course of action for indoor sports when the transmission rates are moderate, substantial, or high. Now, I would love it if as a district, we got to a low rate of transmission. The health and safety plan as it currently reads, we would not be administering weekly testing in a low rate of transmission. But at moderate, substantial, or high, we would in the plan as it's written. And that's in keeping with the recommendation of the Montgomery County Office of Public Health. They do differentiate between vaccinated and unvaccinated students. We have chosen not to include whether or not a child is vaccinated as a criteria because we do not believe at this time that families have all made their minds up about whether or not they feel a vaccine is safe for their child, and we don't want to divide the children. I was a coach for 20 years. I was an athlete. There's no I in team. So the idea here is that we're going to support the athletes as a group and not separate them as the Office of Public Health does recommend at the moderate level. At the substantial or high level, they do recommend assurance testing for all athletes, regardless of vaccination status. In order to permit a student athlete to safely and fully participate in winter sports, and this is key, and to do so without masks during competition and periods of high intensity practice, we want to implement the assurance testing because it's recommended to minimize the risk of transmission. Nothing is foolproof. It is the risk of transmission. Nothing's a guarantee. But that's why we are making this recommendation, because it is the recommendation based on levels of transmission in your community. Following the successful implementation of assurance testing in winter sports, we would be very rapidly considering adding chorus and theater. There is strong interest in those communities for the children to be able to sing and perform without masks. We would like to be able to do that. We've actually had requests to begin assurance testing with those groups in order to allow them to do so maskless. So that's something that our concern is to slowly move this from highest risk activities like wrestling and basketball and cheerleading to other lower risk activities, but still risky activities like chorus and theater if they want to be unmasked.
I'm sorry, you can ask a question at the end. You can, excuse me. I'm sorry, but this is not a public comment time. It comes at the end of the meeting. You're welcome to make a public comment at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
So-
Dr. Yannicka.
Yeah, thank you. So the Test to Stay program, as is mentioned by at least one community member, it has been difficult for asymptomatic students who've been close contacts identified at school needing to quarantine at home under the exclusion guidelines that the Office of Public Health has provided. We have been advocating as a group of superintendents and believe we have reached success at this point finally, that we will have a Test to Stay program soon, within the month, for our students. What that means is that when students are identified as a close contact, and if they are asymptomatic, they can test every other day to stay in school. And that would allow them to be able to not have to quarantine for multiple days. For some of our families who are concerned about loss of income and needing to stay home with their children, or families who are concerned about just loss of access to instruction, this is a terrific option for families who want it. And so that is something that most of our districts in the county are planning on implementing later this month when it's formally approved by the Office of Public Health through the Pennsylvania Department of Public Health. Mr. Payne is going to talk about the specifics of the protocol.
So assurance testing would be supervised by trained coaches, athletic trainers, athletic directors, administrators weekly. In order to participate, students would have to have consent forms signed and participate in the weekly COVID testing. Students would self-administer the non-invasive rapid nasal swab test once per week under the guidance of trained staff. Rapid test results are typically available within 15 minutes. If the test results are negative, the student will continue to practice and/or compete. Results will be shared with the families via a personalized QR code. If the test results are positive, the child would be moved to the isolation room and the family would be contacted to exclude the student from school, regardless of vaccination status. Athletic staff would notify the nurse who would contact Trace and contact the family on the following school day. The health team would continue to consult with the Montgomery County Office of Public Health for guidance on whether any team's practices should be suspended should an outbreak occur among team members or the coaching staff.
Thanks, Mr. Payne. So a little bit about Project ACET for the members of the board. The Office of Public Health and CHOP Policy Lab and the work that they've been recommending. So Project ACET was initiated last January, 2021, the beginning of this year. And between January 5th and October 27th, according to CHOP Policy Lab's data, there are just over 93,000 assurance rapid antigen tests having been administered in this county. So when I asked for data, I asked for just Montgomery County data. Of those tests, 25,500 have been for students between 11 and 19 years old. So this has been primarily for athletic testing of students in 6th through 12th grade, 6th or 7th through 12th grade. The positivity rate, it has been 0.17%. A low percentage of students have been testing positive as a result of this antigen testing since January. We are the 20th county school district. So to Mrs. Parsons' earlier question, we are the 20th district in the county to sign on to Project ACET. And by sign on, I mean we have applied for approval to be a host school for antigen testing. And as Mr. Parsons mentioned before he left, in August, I made a statement that I stood by at the time and I stand by now based on what I knew at the time on August 3rd. I was not recommending testing at that time. We were looking at the fall season, which was all outdoor sports with the exception of water polo. And there is research regarding that has been presented to us by the Office of Public Health regarding the sanitizing effects of chlorine in the water for water sports like water polo and swimming. And so at the time, we felt strongly that we did not need testing to start the school year with our fall sports. That was the excerpt, the quote that Mr. Parsons read regarding my remarks on August 3rd. At this time, we were given another opportunity to sign on if we wanted to before the winter season after the Office of Public Health and CHOP again urged school districts to consider antigen testing for winter sports because they were concerned about rates of transmission based upon last winter's data, as well as the increased threat of the Delta variant this fall. While our rates right now are very low, there is concern that the rates will continue to rise in the winter. This can be mitigated in part by vaccination rates of children 5 to 11. This is all information from the Office of Public Health, but they are concerned about rising rates as windows and doors close and the weather cools off. There are 570 unique sites in the Philadelphia region who now administer the assurance tests through Project ACET. There are about 1,200 staff certified to administer the antigen test. One of the remarks that was made was about efficacy of the testing with regard to the readiness and skill level of the assessors and the testers. So all of our staff who would be involved in supervising the testing are going through mandatory training to be certified through Project ACET so that they can accurately read the report, make sure the students are administering the swab correctly, apply the entire process of testing. Our first training session was this past Friday. It is a 3-hour training session, and at the end, the physician has to certify those staff who've been working for that certification so they can administer the test.
I'm going to ask, please, that you take your comments. If you wish to speak later on in the meeting, you're welcome to do so. The meeting is being recorded, so if you would like to watch it at home at a later time, that's fine too. Please allow the superintendent and Mr. Payne to finish the presentation.
Thanks, Dr. Teretesky. So what we wanted to finish with is we released the plan about a little over a week ago because we wanted the community to have the opportunity to review it fully, to comment, to engage in email exchange, to register their positions with the board well in advance of tonight's vote. We have started middle school basketball at this point. And so it's important to us that there is a vote tonight, one way or the other. The board is also certainly, welcome to ask us to modify the plan if you would like. But we are making our recommendations based on all the information that we have. So these are the FAQs from parents, and I will answer this first one. So several parents asked, why are we testing asymptomatic and vaccinated athletes? Why not just test symptomatic or unvaccinated athletes? So the project is trying to create the safest possible working and learning environment. It reflects the most up-to-date practices. This is all straight from the CHOP Policy Lab. In Montgomery County, approximately 31% of current cases of COVID are breakthrough cases of vaccinated persons. That may be the result of this, we're on this cusp of boosters, we don't know. But because a third of the cases are breakthrough, there's concern that even vaccinated athletes can transmit the virus. In addition, asymptomatic persons can transmit the virus. So when we were discussing, do we split the kids into unvaccinated and asymptomatic versus, we decided we should really just test everyone to be as safe as we possibly can. So what kind of testing does Project ACE use? It uses the Binax Now. This test detects proteins or antigens on the surface of the virus, which cause COVID-19. They should be present in a nasal swab. The nasal swab, when it says there, the front inner walls of the nostril, it's a 1 centimeter. It's essentially the depth of the Q-tip is where it's going into the nostril. So it's not a deep swab like you had when you were getting tested last winter. We could feel it up in your brain. This is just the edge of the nostril. It delivers results in 15 minutes. The students take 5 rotations of the right nostril, 5 rotations of the left nostril. They take the swab, and with the assistance of the trainer, they insert that into a card which has the reagent in it. The card is closed by the trainer. We wait 15 minutes. The results are easy to read. If you can read a pregnancy test, you can read a COVID test in this case. With regard to the accuracy of the tests, I understand that some data has been shared from other sources. My source for this data is the Office of Public Health and CHOP Policy Lab. Their report is that it detects between 93 and 97% for symptomatic individuals, and it detects approximately 79% of asymptomatic individuals. So as Dr. Lorraine mentioned at last Wednesday's informational session for parents, it's about 99.8% accurate for positive tests. For negative tests, the rate of accuracy is greater. So we may have false negatives, but it is highly unlikely to have false positives. According to the Office of Public Health, Dr. Lorraine, who spoke with families last Wednesday, is the medical director for the Office of Public Health. So I'm going to ask Mr. Payne to take the next FAQ.
What happens when someone tests positive at school? A notification of the parents and guardians if the student tests positive, counseling about the need for isolation and symptomatic care, and recommendations for when to seek additional medical attention will happen. If a student tests positive for COVID-19 while at school, they will be isolated on campus until a guardian or designee can come and pick them up.
So, Mr. Payne, would you mind just sort of, if it's a middle school student, could you just clarify, so they go to the test, what are you going to do as the athletic director, help the board understand what's going to happen to that student until a parent comes?
Sure. So already in motion is protocols for if that were to happen. If a student were to report symptoms during a school day, we have a room set up in the nurse's office that is our isolation room. We don't use that for any other nursing care throughout the day. At the middle school, we're going to be testing towards the end of the school day, where we'll still have access to our nursing staff, so that if we get results that a student athlete tests positive, we would be able to escort that student to the nurse's office, use the isolation room, and then activate our nursing staff to contact the family to say that there was a positive test and, activate someone to come and pick them up. And then the following school day, we would start the contact tracing for that student through the nurse's office, as we would if we were to get a phone call from a family saying that our child is at home and they've tested positive. We would start the contact tracing process in the same manner.
Okay, so how accurate is the test? Once again, this information is from the Office of Public Health and CHOP Policy Lab. The real world accuracy of the test depends on a person's viral load or the amount of virus in their body and how much virus is circulating in the community. So as has been mentioned by a community member, the lower the rate of transmission in the community, it is accurate that the lower the rate of efficacy of the testing because you have a smaller pool. One of the things that we have been thinking about and concerned about is the fact that our athletes, if they are unmasked, will be playing within the county and then beyond the county in areas where vaccination rates are lower and transmission rates are higher, thus increasing their risk. And so it's important to us that we make this recommendation to you, knowing that the lower transmission rates will certainly impact the efficacy. Again, in consultation with Dr. Lorraine, he indicated we may have more false negatives, but not false positives, even with the lower rates. So this Abbott study that was conducted basically said that the test has a true positive rate of 97.1%, meaning an accuracy rate of 97.1, and a true negative rate of 98.5. The CDC indicated, as I mentioned earlier, with asymptomatic student athletes, you would see an accuracy rate of about 79%, with the error being in false negatives, not false positives. Mr. Payne, would you mind taking the next slide?
Sure. How are test results shared with the person being tested or with parents or guardians of students tested? As a part of the registration process, the individual or their guardian's cell phone number and email address are entered into the site so that they can generate a personalized QR code. Once the subject results are entered into the PA Rapid Test app, a text message and email are automatically generated to notify those that were linked to the account. So in application for us, we would be getting in contact with the families of our winter athletes to set up an account for the students and enter the cell phone number and email addresses of the family's desire where these results would go. Do you want it to go to which guardian or which email addresses or what phone numbers do you want attached to the student? A QR code is generated, and then we will have a binder of the QR codes per student by name, by sport, right? And so when the basketball team comes for their weekly testing, they would come to a registration table. They would, we would scan in their QR code and we would scan in the booklet that is going to be independently used for that student. There's a code on the booklet. There's a code then for the student. The app will link those two together. And then when the test results are completed, the test administrator manning the table where the results are being monitored would then read the results of the test, use the app, scan the booklet to activate that particular test, which is linked to a particular student. We would enter the results as we see on the test. And then that would generate an automatic message to the family saying that your student had tested positive. And then you would be anticipating a phone call from us because we would be taking your student to the isolation room to activate the nurse to call you and pick you, have the student picked up. For the middle school, I planned to do the results ends of this. So I would be the person reading the test, entering the results for all of our winter athletes. And our athletic trainer would be our backup plan if I were not to be there. We would be the two people seeing the results. We would be the ones entering into the app, and that would be activating the message to the families.
Thanks, Mr. Payne.
Mm-hmm.
This question as well, Mr. Payne.
Mm-hmm. Will parents need to give permission for their child to be tested at school? Yes, parent permission is required for any child under the age of 18 to be tested at school, and permission forms would be used to obtain permission along with some additional information that's needed to perform the test. We would use this to then link up for that information that we would need for registering your student to get a QR code and have the numbers and email addresses of your wishes be put into that.
Thank you. So this question, why can't my athlete refuse to test and wear a mask instead? Several parents have asked that question and has been mentioned tonight. So our team met on that because we did question the idea of allowing students to mask and opt out rather than taking the test. And so the concerns we have around this, so you could determine that you want us to have an opt-out clause. We don't have that in the proposal. The reason why we don't have that in the proposal is we don't believe, based on the experience we've had in the last 10 months, that our students can correctly and consistently and safely wear their masks in competition and in periods of high exertion. And in addition, frankly, the students indicated that their number one goal, even ahead of fans, was being able to play outside without masks. And so we decided that we should recommend that this is a requirement for participation. And it also sort of has the idea of strengthening the entire team safety because everybody is being tested. And in having everyone tested, we know for sure as we go into competition that our athletes are safe unmasked. I understand that this is a controversial piece, and I appreciate, the position of some members of the community. Mr. Payne, do you want to speak to that as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, you brought up a point earlier about our students are going to be playing unmasked with students from other schools and other communities. And so although our transmission rates are currently in a place that makes us feel pretty good about where we are, that's not going to be true for all of the people that we take the court with or we hit the wrestling mat with. And so as a layer of protection against, being unmasked with students who may be unvaccinated in areas of high transmission, we thought that this was the most prudent way to manage the safety of our kids.
The other piece of it that we were concerned about, and it was mentioned earlier by Dr. Chisula, I believe, was the concern about management. And it is a genuine concern. If we have one student who's opting out for medical reasons, there's always an opt-out for medical reasons. If a physician says it's not safe for a student to have the test administered, then that certainly is a different story. But to have the students being managed where you might have 30 athletes on a team and these 12 are masking and these 18 are not is a challenge. According to our athletic directors and our principals, it's a concern for the coaches to be able to manage this winter with everything else that they're managing. I realize there's difference of opinion on that, but nonetheless, that's the position of our athletic directors as they review things with our coaching staff. The last question, I believe it's the last question, I'll double check. Have other schools implemented testing for athletes in our area? And if so, have many students been positive? So the first question actually relates to Mrs. Parsons' earlier question, who's doing the testing? So there are 20 school districts that had signed on as of 2 weeks ago. Now all 22 are in. The last 2 districts have decided to go with Project ACID. We are all doing it in different ways because it's a recommendation, not a requirement. And so different districts are taking different approaches. In our case, I spoke to 2 neighboring districts who've had athletic testing in place since last winter, because I wanted to understand how it's working, how it's being processed, how it's impacting their athletes, before I'm going to change my mind from this summer and make a different recommendation. So in those cases, positive cases have occurred very infrequently. That 0.17% is sort of borne out in the districts with whom I spoke. Potential spread, though, has been stopped, they believe, by quarantining that first case. So as they're doing the testing on a weekly basis, instead of it spreading to 3, 5, 7 members of a team through practices, now they're just stopping with that first case. And so it's reducing the number of students impacted by the virus overall, they believe. This is what they're reporting to me. And it's eliminating the need to suspend practices or contests because they're not having to shut down their program as a result. Anecdotally, I have a relative who's in a private school in the area. His sports team has been shut down 3 times for 2 weeks each. They don't do any testing, they don't do any masking, and 3 times he's lost 6 weeks of the season essentially. And so we feel like this is our best shot, and I believe this is my last slide. Let me just double check that. I'm sorry, there's one more. We believe this is our best shot at the smoothest season we can have for our winter athletes, the healthiest season we can have. This question came from a few parents. If my child tests positive, will the rest of my family need to quarantine? This was on last week's Zoom with the doctor. And the answer is we're going to follow the exclusion guidelines. So if your family members are close contacts, they live with you, and they meet the exclusion guidelines, then yes. However, as test to stay comes in, then you would be able to consent to testing in order to continue to send your child to school. So just in closing, once again, I realize the board has a difficult decision tonight. Our athletic departments, our building administration, myself, we will respect whatever decision you make. The winter health and safety plan as it reads has assurance testing as part of it. I do believe it's the only controversial part of the plan. The rest of the plan is essentially consistent with the previous 3 seasons during the pandemic. I realize for parents who disagree that you are unhappy with this recommendation. I'm sorry for that. I certainly strive to have respectful, positive relationships with every member of the community. I don't doubt that you are doing what you believe is best for your children. And I would ask you to give me the same courtesy that our athletic directors, our building principals, myself, we are all using the information we have to make the best recommendations we can for the students. And with that, I conclude the presentation. Thank Mr. Payne for all of his work. And we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. So from the board, yep, Mr. Needham.
So sorry, I just have one detail.
Oh, thank you. Got it again. You talked about designated individuals at the middle school, of whom you're one, and I think you said you have an assistant who's another. Is that true at the high school too? Will there be designated individuals who are in charge of the information, and that's as far as it goes?
Well, I'm going to say yes to that. I don't know who their individuals are going to be. They're going to have a similar, we're going to have similar plans because we're going to be trained by the same group of CHOP doctors and the same trainers that trained us, right? I can speak very confidently about the middle school plan because I made it. If this were to be approved, the process would be students would check in with their coach, and their coaches would be able to verify that we're attaching the appropriate QR code for the student to the appropriate card that's going to be handed to them to assure that that's a perfect one-to-one match. The coaches wouldn't be involved in any of the testing procedures unless we found ourselves really shorthanded. They got trained so that they could do it, but that's not part of our current plan. So our coaches would check in the students, move them on to the athletic trainer who would supervise the self-swabbing portion and the insert of the swab into the card. And then when it was a completed test, the packet was closed with the swab inside. It's on a plate, and the plate would then come to me at the last station. And then when they're tested, when the coaches have done the check-in, the coaches are gone. And when the students are tested, they may go back because we're going to do this near the end of the school day, but still during the school day. And then when we read the results, we would go and get any students if we had to, knowing that the 0.17% positivity rate, I don't feel the need to keep all of the student athletes there until the 15 minutes is up. If that were to be an adjustment that you guys would like, we can certainly do that. But at that point, when the students were done testing and the coaches were done checking in, they would all go, and the only remaining people in our room would be our athletic trainer and myself.
Okay, thank you.
I do presume that the high school will put a similar plan together, considering they're going to go through the same training I went through on Friday.
Because that's part of the whole plan.
Yeah, they give us some leeway on how we want to orchestrate it. But they make some recommendations, and there's some parameters that kind of lead the horse to water, and you land in a place where that really makes the most sense. It helps keep the coaches away from the testing portion, which is advantageous for the coaches. And then it limits the amount of people who are going to have their eyes on the end result, which is, I think, important to the families.
Thank you for the clarification.
Certainly.
I have a question. Yeah. Who manages the tech support for the app itself? Like if something would go wrong, would that be our district or would it be this, the project?
So I don't know. My presumption from Friday's training would be the CHOP doctors we worked with. If we had issues with the app, and because the app is run through PA Rapid Test and that's linked to CHOP, I believe we'd be contacting CHOP saying we're having issues with the app.
So are you going to, and you may not know the answer to this question, but I would think that it would be beneficial to test the app and make sure everything's working before we start the whole testing program.
Yes.
So that you're not caught on day one, not like having tech issues with the app. And
Certainly. So we did that on Friday.
okay.
And when you, so the kits come in like a box of 40. And every box that you open up, you do a test run first. And you essentially do that for every box. So every 40 athletes that we do, we have to retest the equipment in the box, and which then forces us to test the app also.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
I have a question about, and you may not know this yet either, if a student does need to opt out for medical reasons, how will that be handled and what's the process?
So our plan currently would be the same as for any other medical opt-out, where we'll, if you approve the plan, we'll send out the consent form to families. Families will be able to review that form, determine if they can sign it. If they can't sign it or they have concerns, they can consult their physician. If the physician has concerns, then they can submit to us that they're asking for a medical exemption. They ask for a medical exemption, then we would have two choices, and certainly you can let us know if you want us to go one way or another. One is that the athlete would mask for competition and high exertion. I will tell you, I am concerned specifically about our wrestlers and their ability to correctly and consistently stay in a mask during competition. I just don't know how you do that in wrestling. And so I do have a question there. Basketball, we have tried that. And so even though I think it's concerning, and we had a lot of chin strapping going on, and frankly, they have a lot of models of chin strapping going on in the NCAA where they're testing and what, that would be essentially what we would do. So they would have this typical medical opt-out if they need to do so. So our goal would be between now and the start of the high school season, November 19th, the athletic directors would be working with coaches and families on the consent form. At the middle school right now, we have girls basketball and
Right now, that's all that's live, but cheerleading, wrestling, and boys basketball is right around the corner.
okay, within a few weeks. So we would start with girls basketball and then move from there.
Any other questions?
Yeah, could you talk a little bit more about the complexity of opt-out? And is the concern about whether or not that can be enforced during play, or is it an administrative challenge of managing the paperwork?
It's, the concern is that if we're doing the best we can for the athletes, that they would then be masked if they're opting out. If they're masked, there's concern that they could correctly and consistently wear their mask in competition. The management piece, Mr. Payne, this was really from our athletic directors out of concern for the management of the sport. Why don't you speak to that?
It's there's a lot of moving parts. We're talking about hundreds of winter athletes. And on any given day, we're managing students who are absent that day. We're managing eligibility for them. It's another layer of like, who needs what at what moment. And doing this wrong comes at quite a risk that we just felt was too risky, right? Like we were looking to do the very best we could for everybody, to mitigate any kind of potential spread or exposure. And it's bigger than just the exposure to our kids, because then our kids go home and then they're with their families or their extended families, or they're with their neighbors. And so like having kids go to all of these other places and then come back to our community, the management of getting that right every day left us worried, right? So to eliminate the worry, we thought it would be best to test everybody.
There was a point in the conversation where we talked about opt-outs versus, opt-outs and who might not play, right? We would rather have an athlete of a family with an immunocompromised child feel safe to participate. Back to that idea of, making it as safe as we can for everyone, than the risk of a student who maybe plays a couple of different, leagues, and this is one of their activities and they're not comfortable testing. So they choose to play CYO or AAU or some other program rather than participate with us. We'd love all of the students to participate. And I've had one student contact me with concerns about participating in testing. And I think the primary concern is that fear about, what if I test positive? Will my teammates blame me? Will my family blame me because now my siblings have to be quarantined? And it's a real concern, I understand. And what we talked about at the meeting with the student athletes was you're a team. Like, this is part of what you have to do, support each other. Anybody can get COVID. You can be vaccinated, you can feel like you do all the right things, and you can still get COVID. The idea behind a team is, all for one, one for all. I coached a long time. You want the athletes to be supportive of each other. If somebody gets sick and test positive and they step out, what they're doing is a service to the rest of their team, because they're minimizing the risk to the rest of the team. They're maximizing the opportunity for ongoing competition. So this is all about relative risk and reward. There's no like hard and fast. That's why there's so many different plans across the county. We've really tried to labor over these recommendations. We recognize there's other points of view. This is our recommendation based on everything we know and what we've learned.
A follow-up question on that would be around the number of students. So Mr. Payne, you had said there's hundreds of student athletes that would be tested on a weekly basis.
Well, there's hundreds of winter athletes total. So, yes, I'll state the obvious. The high school has more sports teams than we do, and they carry like a JV program and a varsity program. So they're working with numbers way larger than us. But even our winter sports, we're going to be 40, 80, 100, 150 middle schoolers will participate in a winter sport. Now, our season is staggered differently than the high school, so I won't have 150 probably all at the same time for very long. Our girls basketball starts first. We have one gym, so they'll run their season completely before our boys team starts because they can't share a gym effectively. You can't run full court for both teams, right? So our seasons are staggered a little bit. Wrestling overlaps with both of those seasons and cheer overlaps with both of those seasons. So about 100 would probably be my max for an extended period of time at any one given moment. But a testing day would be about 40 kids a day, roughly.
If I could just add to that. We've discussed the fact that we would only do testing. Each team would test on a practice day, not a competition day.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want athletes or the coaches having to scramble before a competition. And so practice days, that would give the coach and the athletes time to adjust if they needed to adjust. We also talked about, we had a few parents who asked about, could we do a double test? Let's say a student tests positive and they want a confirmation test. We can do that. We can, wait 15 minutes, give them another test, double check that it's still coming up positive. And so we're happy. We want students to feel as comfortable as they can. We want families to feel as comfortable and as confident as they can. We want the athletes to be able to compete unmasked and not worry about whether, they're going to get COVID from others. I do have concern about the fact that something we can't fix, is that this community has done very, very well in keeping the rates low. As a whole, the community's been phenomenal in being responsive and responsible. But we're going to compete against teams where it's the Wild West, very low vaccination rates, very high transmission rates. We are the lowest transmission rate in the county, and I think we should be proud of that. This community, the families do a great job. So, but we can't fix the fact that we're going to go into competition unmasked against communities that are not as responsible. And so we're trying to do the best we can to keep our kids as safe as we can.
Just a second follow-up, the reason I was asking about the numbers is I do think it's an exceptionally valid concern that a false positive has a very significant impact on the student and their families. But the numbers would say our chances of a false positive at the rate of testing that we're doing are exceptionally low. And so you had said the false positive rate on the Binax testing is roughly 3%.
Well, yes, on the Abbott study, that's correct. Yeah. Dr. Lorraine last week, when I asked him, what would you rate the accuracy of the test? His answer was 99.8%. So I don't know if that's gone up since that Abbott study, but that was his answer last week on Zoom. For the likelihood of a positive being a positive. Yeah. The likelihood of a negative being a negative is lower. It's about 79 or 80%. So there's a 1 in 5 chance that a student would test negative, but would actually have the virus. And that's why the weekly testing, you're more likely to catch that if you can. So.
Dr. Yannicone, just to clarify, the discussions that you have had with the students, with what they want to take the masks off, they want fans. What percentage, and I apologize if I missed this, were all of the students, all of the student athletic, what kind of
No,
percentage?
it was not a command performance. I asked Mr. Giordano, the athletic director, and Dr. Rittenhouse to invite student athletes to come to the auditorium to answer questions, to hear their concerns. There were about 25 athletes in the room. So it was not a huge percentage of the athletic population. According to we did have representation from all sports.
Okay.
And according to Dr. Ritt, this was the majority of captains of teams.
So, but everybody was invited to come?
Yeah.
Okay, so some people decided to come, everybody was invited.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't fault the students. They had the option to come. Those who had questions or were interested.
Yeah,
came.
that when everybody's busy and has.
Yeah, they may have had to meet with a teacher or something else. So we met with the students who came.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Yannicone. Thank you, Mr. Payne, for the presentation, for all the information that you shared, and all the time that your team took to put everything together. We greatly appreciate that.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to move on in the agenda. E, Human Resources, Personnel and HR Contracts. Board of School Directors approves the following personnel as presented in the attachment: administrative personnel, certificated personnel, support personnel, temporary personnel, and extra pay for extra responsibilities 2021-2022, and conference workshop attendance. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Green?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mr. Needleman. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Teretesky.
Aye. F, Academic Affairs. The Board of School Directors approves the resolution between the Pennsylvania Department of Education Department and the School District of Springfield Township to authorize Dr. Mary Jo Yannicone to electronically sign any and all contracts, agreements, grants, and/or licenses with the department. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Any comments or questions?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mr. Needleman. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Teretesky.
Aye. And number 2, acknowledgement of donation. The Board of School Directors approves a donation in the amount of $500 from Tom and Ann Fair Lieber to purchase library books and STEM supplies for the Erdenheim Elementary Library in memory of their son, James. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? I want to extend a thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Fair Lieber for this donation. It definitely will add to quality of our students in their library. Thank you.
Really meaningful.
Mhm. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Green?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mr. Needleman. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Teretesky.
Aye. Number 3, 2021-2022 Winter Athletic Health and Safety Plan. The Board of School Directors approves the 2021-2022 Winter Health and Safety Plan. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions from the board?
I'd actually like to make a comment.
Mhm.
So I do have a student athlete who played winter basketball last year. And we just didn't know what we know now. And if there was any chance of exposure, it was very disruptive. They missed practices, they missed games. They couldn't play until they had a negative test. It was hard to get an appointment. So days would go by. We didn't know as a family if he was exposed, if he was exposing all of us, if there was a danger to my mother. It really did cause like a domino effect chain reaction. And I really feel that what we're trying to do is we're trying to be proactive instead of reactive to avoid all of that disruption that we experienced last year. In addition, I did watch the games virtually. The boys cannot keep the masks on their faces when they're on the court. They just can't. They fall down. They're not doing anything wrong. They just don't stay on their nose and mouth when they're running up and down the court. So I will be supporting this plan tonight because I do think that it is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
I have a comment as well. I'm remembering way back to the summer of 2020. It feels like forever ago, but at the same time, just yesterday. And one of the things I had said during the time when we were discussing what to do with schools was I was hoping for testing to even bring the kids back to schools. And I understand, as things have changed, it has been harder, but you heard of all these schools that put in their own testing. They were the trailblazers. We're not trailblazing anything here. We're following obviously groups and groups of schools that have done this before, who were doing it early on, who developed their own testing protocols. So, to not implement testing now when we have something where we can put it in place and it serves a purpose. It's to take off masks, which not too long ago, everybody wanted us to come back to school without masks. Well, here we are, we're voting to see about having the children play sports without masks on. And I think I caught this, I wasn't 100% sure, but as Mr. Parsons was leaving the building, he said, none of this is normal. I may be misquoting, but none of this is normal. It hasn't been, it will not be normal until we're back to normal. And for now, we're not. For now, we're not. You can't make it, we can't make it.
Board meeting, excuse me, Mr. DeFranco. I'm sorry, but this is a board meeting of the board. The public comment is at the end of the meeting. This is the time for the board members to speak and discuss. So I appreciate it if you could please respect the board and their comments.
Thank you, Dr. Taratuski. So we can't force it to be normal. We just have to do the best we can do for the students. And if the students want to play without masks on, I can support this. It is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that have a comment?
Sure. Look, I have personal opinions on all of this, but I don't know how valuable they are. I think testing is no big deal. I work in an environment where I am in person with others. I test often. It's not a challenging or difficult thing to do. I think it's a reasonable thing to ask of our students, and it does provide a better, safe environment. However, I think it's very reasonable to request an opt-out option for those who don't have the personal opinion that I do. And I would like to suggest that we could consider passing this as it stands today with further deliberation or discussion on whether or not an opt-out option for parents and children who would like that could be implemented at a later date. I don't know if that spurs any further discussion from the board on whether or not that would be reasonable, but I think it's a reasonable request because the risk for individuals who would opt out would be so low, given the number of students that we have that would be participating, and it would be a bit more inclusive.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to that if I could. So if they would still have to get tested to play, regardless if they opted out to the weekly testing, because if they got exposed, they would not be able to return to play until they did produce a negative test. Would that be correct? Like if there was exposure, so last year, if my child was at risk of having been exposed, he could not come back to play until we proved that he had a negative test. So regardless if they opted out of the weekly testing, if there was exposure, they would have to be tested to prove that they were negative before they could come back to play.
Yes, thank you. The exclusion guidelines would still apply. The difference would be that because we would be part of the project, we could administer the Binax test at school. So by the same token, let's say a student comes to school and they're not feeling great during the day, but they really want to play in the game that night. We could test them at school to determine that they're negative before allowing them to get on the court or wherever, So we could do that if a family had consented to testing. With regard to the opt-out, the only clarification I would ask if the board decided for the opt-out is, are you suggesting opt-out with or without masks? Because then we would have to implement that plan. So if you want to recommend opting out as an option, trying to say without, do you want athletes to then have to mask or not? Because, for example, if a wrestler were to opt out, are you suggesting that you want us to try to have that athlete mask while competing?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I don't know what the recommendations would be on that. So I think I would want the administration to do a bit more research on what would be the right recommendation. That's why I'm saying, like, I don't know that we need to hold this up for middle school basketball athletics, but I would want further deliberation on what an opt-out option could do, and then we could make a change at a later date.
Okay.
I would be concerned if there were an opt-out and we were going to require masks for people opting out, you're basically putting a sign on a group of children that you've got to now track. And we can talk about how easy or hard it is to track, but like as you go and as we heard Mr. Payne reference, like you're testing once a week and they're playing after school every day. And it's, they show up for practice. Oh, are you the one that you have to, do you wear the mask or do they wear I don't know how we would keep track of that. Now it's not for me to figure out, I guess, but that would be my big concern, is how you would even on a daily basis identify the children that should be, the students that should be wearing face covering.
And I've seen them play and the masks don't stay on their faces.
Right.
So I personally would not be in support of opt-out.
Am I correct that parents would have to consent to having their child tested, correct?
They would.
Okay,
but
so-
if consent is a requirement
Okay,
for participation, then in essence, their choice is, based on the way we've proposed it, if you'd like to participate in winter athletics, you must sign the consent.
okay. So, but that wouldn't have anything to do in terms of the relationship to the opt-out, correct?
If
That would be
the-
something different.
If the board would recommend that we modify the plan
Mm-hmm.
to include an opt-out option, then my question would be, are you suggesting that we allow families to opt out and then the student does not have to mask? Or are you suggesting that they opt out and we require masking? And I would ask, to the extent you can, to make that decision, because if basketball players in the middle school are sent a consent form and they opt out, I'd like to know what the board would like. Would you like us to have those athletes masked, or are you okay with them being unmasked? So that essentially the testing would then be an optional program, not a requirement.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. And in that case, I would want to say, if we agree that an opt-out would be a good choice, we would ask those children to mask and enforce that. That would be how I would suggest we would do it. And then we should come back in public forum again and discuss whether or not that is the right option longer term.
I keep forgetting to do this. I think Mr. Bedard raises a good point, but I would like to see us keep that point a bit more on the horizon. I fully support this plan.
Right.
I think this is the way to go. We can't get past this until, none of us are past this until we're all past this. And this is the way to get us all past this. To Mr. Bedard's point, I think as things change, because the one constant in all of this is that things change. As things change, let's come back to the opt-out piece and let's adjust as we need to. But for now, everybody tests.
So I guess have a little bit of a thought to weigh in on this. Because I have been involved in this process of both testing having to test, having to opt out, having to review requests to opt out as part of my role in another district where I work. So in terms of a student needing to opt out for medical reasons, because I feel like that in and of itself, that I feel could be a tipping point. And I feel like the person that would be in the best position to decide whether a student could indeed opt out of the weekly testing because of medical reason and then mask successfully or safely would be their primary care physician. So if we were to have an opt-out part of that, I would feel strongly that the opt-out should be an opt-out that's recommended by the child's family physician for a viable medical reason, and that physician assess the student's ability to safely wear a mask under exertion. I just feel like that I don't want to take the risk of masking a student who may overexert and be unable to get their breath, especially in basketball or in wrestling, particularly in wrestling where it's very strenuous. I would not want to be responsible for a child that becomes ill or injured in that regard. So that's my concern with masking while playing. Not only am I concerned about spreading COVID to families and everyone else, but I'm concerned for the safety of the student who's actually playing. So, I mean, I feel like if there was an opt-out for a viable medical reason and that could be assessed, and then if the physician says, yes, they can safely wear a mask, then safely wear a mask. If they say no, the student cannot safely wear a mask, then I think then the family has a choice to make at that point.
So I heard that there is already an opt-out for medical reason.
For masking.
For the testing. Is that what you said in your
We can
presentation?
implement an opt-out for medical reasons, as we have for masking.
Right.
Yes, we
Okay.
we already have paperwork for medical opt-out for masking. We could certainly implement the same for student athletes.
Okay.
And
That's what I thought I
last
heard in your presentation, that there would be for sure a medical opt-out for the testing.
Yes.
Okay.
We would always honor a physician's recommendation for the health and safety of the student. The whole point of this is to keep the student healthy.
Okay.
There are some logistical concerns that may come up. For example, let's say, I'm going to go back to wrestling. Let's say we have two wrestlers who spar at practice. One wrestler is testing and the other wrestler is not. And the second wrestler's physician has said that it's not safe for them to mask. So the sparring partners have to agree that they're just going to spar unmasked. And if the student who's not testing is sick, then it is what it is. So some families may be comfortable with that and some families may not. And you see, that's
And
one
that
of the
puts the
scenarios
student-
that we discussed.
Right. That puts the student in a very bad position of having to be afraid to then spar with a partner who they don't know is sick. So we're talking about fear on both sides. So that's concerning.
It is, I mean, what I can say in general is, yes, we would certainly try to work with families who had a medical documentation for an exception to testing.
Okay.
Yeah. There are some logistical concerns that we've raised. That's just one example.
So I guess I want to, are there any final comments or questions from the board? I want to kind of pull together what we are proposing at this point. So where are we with the opt-out piece? Are we just making sure that, do we want to make sure that there is a provision for a medical opt-out that's in the plan?
When you say that, what I thought I heard you saying, Dr. Charatuski, is that if there was going to be a medical opt-out for the test, you wanted to include
The requirement to mask.
the requirement, the
assessment-
physician
The
saying,
assessment of a requirement to mask. And
Yeah.
if they're not able to wear a mask,
Then they have,
physician says they're not able to wear a mask and they're not able to test, then I think we need to have a decision about whether they're even able to compete and participate. So we have to have some assurance that they'd be safe.
Yeah.
And keep their team safe.
okay, if that's what we're talking about for medical opt-out, then
That's what I would propose. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there for the board consideration. That's what I'm proposing.
Would you like me to consult with CHOP and OPH, our neighbors who neighboring districts, to see if they have an opt-out, what are the components of it, and how they, in advance of this meeting on the 16th?
yeah.
Is that fine?
So we could adjust the plan for tonight to say that we will include a medical opt-out with further consultation on masking versus unmasking for the 16th. And in the interim, any sport that's playing, we'll ask the student athlete to be masked.
Okay.
They have medical opt-out.
Okay. Are we comfortable with that? Is the board comfortable with that? Jeff, I know you had questions about that. The opt-out.
Before the 16th, would the administration also be able to do additional research on the implications of a non-medical opt-out? Like, are other schools that are doing it, so that it can be brought back for discussion, consideration?
I can tell you, the districts that have, to my knowledge, there's not a non-medical. I'll double check.
All right.
So just to clarify,
yeah,
we're gonna move as is,
yes,
adding the medical,
yes.
but we're also going to ask that we open it up for reconsideration at a later date.
To add the opt-out provision only, to discuss the opt-out provision only.
To be clear, you always have the opportunity to revisit your decisions.
Okay.
So whether you choose to give direction to reopen it or reconsider it in 2 weeks, it's always at your option anyway.
Okay. Thanks. All right, any other final comments or questions from the board? Okay, so we are approving the winter athletic health and safety plan as it stands. And we've asked for additional information on both medical and non-medical opt-out procedures. Okay. Roll call, Ms. Green, or Ms. Green?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Section I, property, number 1, air monitoring station license renewal agreement. The Board of School Directors approves the renewal of the license agreement between the School District of Springfield Township and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection for a 5-year term commencing November 30th, 2021 and ending November 30th, 2026. Is there a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Green?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 2, Interstate Maintenance Corporation Contract Addendum. The Board of School Directors approves the contract addendum between the School District of Springfield Township and Interstate Maintenance Corporation for the cost of service not to exceed $5,566 per month pending final solicitor review. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Green?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 3, change order, high school water retention basin. The Board of School Directors approves the change order in the amount of $50,950 for B. Blair Corporation to perform modifications to the high school water retention basin. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 4, Plan Con Part 1, interim reporting. The Board of School Directors approves the author and authorizes the submission of Plan Con Part 1, interim reporting for the Springfield Township High School project. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Green?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 5, Bristol Environmental Contract. The Board of School Directors approves the contract between the School District of Springfield Township and Bristol Environmental for asbestos removal and related work at the Church Road Old Enfield site in the amount of $3,250. Is there a motion?
Motion.
In a second. Any comments or questions? Ms. Green?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 6, Dewey Engineers Contract. The Board of School Directors approves the contract between the School District of Springfield Township and Dewey Engineers for structural, building, and grounds analysis of the bus garage, not to exceed $5,470. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second? Any comments or questions?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. At this time, we will have public comments on non-agenda items. Again, we'll allot another 30 minutes maximum to this time period. So if you are planning to speak this evening, could you please keep your comments to about 3 minutes to allow all of the people who would wish to speak. And when you come to the microphone, if you could please add your name and your address. I see that there are a few people online, a few attendees online who have initials in their name. If you could please change those initials to your full name so that we know who you are and we're able to call on you if you wish to speak. We'll go
All right.
with,
I'm going to go ahead and start with a Google form from online. and
Okay.
We'll start with Mr. Jim Daly.
Okay.
Sure if you're in person or online. Mr. Daly?
don't see Mr. Daly online.
Okay. Next up is Ms. Megan Buckles. Ms. Buckles? Very good.
Megan.
All right, next person that signed up was Ms. Mary Ellen Reeves.
Okay. Well, let's remove my mask. Mary Ellen Reeves, Ms. Mary Ellen Reeves, 214 Station Avenue. You guys all know me. Dr. Yannicone, I'd actually really like to thank you. Over the past several months of me attending school board meetings, you have always been very courteous and answered my questions. And I just want to extend my appreciation for that. I really thank you. And I really do believe that you try your best to make everyone happy in the community. I just want to thank you for that. This really has been a tough couple years for everybody in the community. I don't think there's any secret. The township continues to be polarized due to differences of opinions. I mean, I myself have endured ridicule online. I've been mentioned by name by elected members of the community. I've been called names in public due to my thoughts and opinions when my only concerns have been the students in the school district rather. This is not about me. It's okay, I have a thick skin. I don't really care. I don't care what people say. However, it's really taught me a really interesting lesson here. And I think that's something that maybe you feel attacked by a lot of the community, but it's really shown me that parents don't feel heard. They don't feel heard. And I think the number one thing that needs to be accomplished here is that parents must be heard. As a school board, I implore you to do better. I don't think anyone here has malice when it comes to the parents of these students. I think you're trying your best. I don't think it's an easy job. We just can't continue to have little to no public discussion. I don't think it really helps the school board. I don't really think it helps the community. The community just cannot be silenced anymore they entrust their children to you for the majority of the day. And like I said before, parents must be heard. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. And it looks like we have a hand up from Ms. Buckles, who we called on before. Ms. Buckles, are you still there online?
Oh, I see.
Just saw her, so it must have gone away.
Okay.
All right, if we can come back to you.
Oh,
There she is.
Yep.
If you guys could bring in Ms. Buckles.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Hi.
Yes. So
Megan, I'm sorry.
I just have a couple questions.
Megan, I'm sorry. Share your
yes.
address, please, for
Can you
the.
hear me?
Yes, can you just share your address for the record?
Yes, to the number 2 Chanel Avenue, Flowertown, PA.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to comment on the vote that just took place. In the same gyms that our kids would be practicing in for high school sports and middle school sports are the same gyms that plenty of other leagues practice in that my kids are also in that don't have to test and are playing in the same exact time period in the same exact time of year. And this has been ongoing. These gyms are in use now. They've been in use. Everything's been fine. And I just wanted to make that comment so that you're aware that there's going to be plenty of other leagues going on, going about their business, able to play without being tested. Now, you know, this is one more thing now that I'm going to have to go and pay for because I'm not going to allow my daughter to have to go through this. Another process. She's already resilient enough. So are my other kids. So I just want to put on the record that I feel it's unfair. I don't support your decision. I feel that for 8 years, I put my hope and strength and everything. I never worried about Springfield Township in my life. I love the school district. I'm a single mom. School means a lot to me. What my kids do there is so important. And I, for the first time ever, don't trust the school district. And I'm very, very worried about where this is going. So I just want to make note of that. And, I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but I'm just letting you know, like this, like other people said tonight, this is affecting us. It's affecting families. It's affecting my family directly. And I'm not the only one, as you know. And I just want to put that on the record because I did not get to come in tonight because I actually had to work tonight till 8:45. So I couldn't get there. So, I just want to, I really hope that you guys go back and have a meeting and change your minds and overturn this. Because, it's just us. It makes no sense at all. Nobody in this population is dying and nobody's getting sick. More kids died of the flu last year than of COVID. And if you need to go check that, you can check it. It's online. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
All right, next on the sign-up sheet was Ms. Catherine Trinkle.
Thank you for letting me speak. I didn't know I was next because I saw some names ahead of me, but that's okay. Waiting for Mary Ellen. Oh, she's taping me. So thanks for letting me speak. I had the feeling I was kind of monitored before coming up here for several reasons. Someone was checking out my social media site and posted on one of the neighborhood pages that I was speaking tonight. Plus, you spoke about the library situation prior to me coming up to talk. So I had the feeling I was kind of already set up to come up here tonight. So I'm trying not to be too nervous. I had a hard time finding out if some books were in the library. I did finally figure it out, but also Dr. Johnston did email me after I emailed the librarian, who was too nervous to answer me, and sent it to her, which was fine. So one of the things I want to talk about is while sex and use of pornography is occurring amongst the students, which we all know, I would like to discuss this a little bit in my 3 minutes. Many people, I'm sure, are aware of the harmful effects of pornography. Children who are exposed to pornographic images often link their first experience of sexual arousal to pornography. So exposure does not have to rise to the level of addiction before harm is done. The early exposure begins an unhealthy foundation on which teens learn about their sexuality in the context of dehumanization of men and women in the act of sex itself. Pornography is also addictive, which I am sure many are aware. What creates arousal last month no longer excites and only prompts a desire for more erotic material. So if you're addicted, you just keep going. Now, I'm aware that students can get porn anywhere. We all are, but it should not be in schools. When my kids were in school, there were blocks on the internet to prevent it, but I'm not sure if that still applies. You said tonight there are 26,000 books in the library. Besides the use of porn, early sexual behavior, notwithstanding the emotional aspects and harm it creates, and I speak from personal experience as a victim of sexual assault as a teen. The incidence of STDs are enormous in this country, as I'm sure the school nurses are well aware, and of which you're short of. In 2018, there were 7,600 new cases of HIV in the 13 to 24 age group, along with 26 million new cases in 2018, and half were in the 13 to 24 age group, according to the CDC website. That being said, I would like to point out 2 books that I found in the school library, and that was only 2. I'm sure there are more.
Ms. Tringle, 30 seconds.
Am I out of my time?
30 seconds.
Sir, can anybody give me their time? Michelle's giving me her time. So this book here is, for years, my standard method of masturbation was stuffing a sock in the front of my pants and manipulating the bulge. This would evolve into hip thrusting while thinking of my latest gay ship. Memorably, I got off once while that just by rubbing the front of my jeans and imagining getting a blowjob. That's in Genderqueer, page 63 in the high school library. We've been dating for 2 months. We've made out, we've had sex, we've moved on to sexting at work. I got a new strap-on harness today. I can't wait to put it on. It will fit my favorite dildo perfectly. You are going to look so hot. I can't wait to have your C-O-C-K, I can't say it, in my mouth. I'm going to give you the blowjob of your life. Then I want you inside me. This is the most turned on I've ever been in my life. I'm dying. Page 166 in Genderqueer. This is the visual I've been picturing, but I can't feel anything this much hotter when it was only in my imagination. Let's try something else. Page 167. Would any of you like to read this to your 9th through 12th grader yourselves? Would you read it to them? Look me in the eye and tell me you would do it. Would you read it? Would you?
I'm sorry, we're not, this is your comment
Okay,
period. We'll
all
allow
right.
you to comment period. We're not
Next
gonna
book
respond.
in our library, actually, it's taken out right now. I had to get it from another library. Some child, because they are children under the age of 18, has this book in their hands right now in this school. You told me to take off my pajama pants, which I did. You then took off your shorts, followed by your boxers. There you stood in front of me, fully erect, and said, "Taste it." And this is a 13-year-old boy's story of his cousin raping him. At first, I laughed and refused, but then you said, "Come on, Matt, taste it. This is what boys like us do when we like each other." I finally listened to you. The whole time I knew it was wrong, not because I was having sexual intercourse with a guy, but that you were my family. I only did that for about 45 seconds before you had me stop. I'm going to keep going because I know I'm running out of time. You eventually got up off me and told me to come to the bathroom, that you wanted to show me one more thing. You turned on the light and closed the door. You began stroking yourself in front of me. I just stood there nervous because I didn't know what to expect next. You just kept watching that. So I just stood there and watched you. Then you began to moan slightly. I know you guys think this is soft porn, but this is for 9th through 12th graders.
Strickler, your time is up.
Okay, thank you. God mercy, let God have mercy on your souls. Is somebody laughing? I did. Oh, you're sad.
Hey, guys,
I'm sorry.
we're gonna keep moving.
I'm sorry, we're gonna keep moving, please. Ms. Trinkle, can you put your mask back on, please? Can you put your mask back on, please? Or you can leave, it's okay. Oh, something is wrong with you. You think that's okay. Thank you very much. Can we please respect the meeting? Ms. Trinkle, can you please put your mask back on?
Thank you.
I'm asking you to put your mask back on. Thank you.
Her religion was just mocked by
Can, all right, can we just move on, please? We're moving on. This is a comment period. I'm sorry, if you're going to continue to disrupt the meeting, then you will be asked to leave. This is a comment period. You're welcome to come and comment. You'll have 3 minutes. We're going to call on the folks who have already signed up first.
Next sign up is Ms. Joan Parsons. I think she's still online.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, hi. Okay, regarding the books that are going around, I would say they're probably going around the United States of America, because they're also in Tennessee, they're in North Penn High School, they're in Virginia. And again, you know through different sites that it's on the news. They're showing the videos of how upset the parents are. And all I want to say is that I was on Twitter and it says you can't post or comment for 18 hours. Your post didn't follow our community standards on nudity or sexual activity. And this post was, it's not my post, it was somebody else, actually is showing the pictures in the book that the previous lady was speaking about. And then another one is Instagram agrees that the groomer book in our kids' schools is pornographic. Yes, Facebook jail, I got it. It's good for grammar school libraries, but not Facebook. And these are all the issues that are going around. And I used to be on the library board with Mary Catherine, and I know the ebooks come in and go out, and it's always a revolving door with the books. And there has to be something on your sites that will alert the parents that these are not appropriate for 9 to 12-year-olds. They're minors, they're under 18. I went into Amazon and looked up these books, of which there's probably hundreds of them, that have the same type of sexual gross acts. But what it says is, here, you can see part of what the book says. And you go in, and as a parent, they would read some of the paragraphs from the book to give you an idea that this book is okay for your child. But if you actually go to the book, then you will find out how disgusting and perverted it is. And I think you as the board should do something now to, number one, get these books out of circulation for our students. And there's actually books for grammar school, which I will email you when I get when I get them all together, because I have been emailing you on this topic. And I just want to hear in any of your meetings that you are going to get rid of these books, and you're also going to put some type of a warning out to all the parents that they have to really look at what the students are taking out and reading. This, I do feel, I hate to say it, but it's a form of indoctrination. And I just don't think the community or anybody wants their children to read this kind of, I don't care if you think it's soft porn, it's not. If those type of pictures were on a computer at any of your desks, you would be let go. You would be considered, watching child porn because it is child porn. I mean, the pictures are horrible. And maybe you didn't know about it, but you know about it now.
Excuse me.
And that's what I'd like to say. And thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Next up is Mr. Jim Daly. Mr. Daly, are you online? Just checking. All right, moving to the in-person signups. Ms. Eileen DeFranco.
Good evening. Yes, I will. My name is Eileen DeFranco, and I was a lifelong Philadelphian until I moved to 9 Highland Avenue in Flowertown last December. I also worked as a school nurse in Philadelphia for 25 years. And prior to that, I taught second grade for 5 years. I've been reading a lot lately and hearing a lot about the angst going on about books at school board meetings here, obviously, and throughout the country. And as an educator, I must confess that this ongoing conflict both pains and surprises me. What I learned in my career is that the vast majority of teachers are incredibly dedicated to the children they teach and want only the best for them. Librarians are unfortunately in very short supply in Philadelphia, and almost all of the school libraries in the city are closed due to unequal state funding. Here in Springfield, I have been amazed by the quality of education, the state-of-the-art facilities, and the dedication of librarians. One librarian happily went out of her way every week to provide books about sea turtles to one of my grandchildren. And I'm sure she did the same thing for other children who are all caught up in the love of learning. That a librarian of this caliber would select a book that would be detrimental or harmful to the children in her care is really beyond my comprehension. So why are some parents up in arms about books in classrooms and school libraries? Why so now when it has been so rarely the case in the past? Children have been reading books in school that reflect changes in society for generations. They also see these societal changes on the TV, and for the last 20 years, they can read them or see them on an internet that is largely unpoliced by their parents. From my experience as an educator, I learned that children don't go to their school libraries to get dangerous information that might harm them. They go to the internet on their personal computers or their cell phones, and they also go to their peers. I would agree with concerned parents that there are many things that can be detrimental to our children, who are, by the way, smarter and wiser and hardier than we might think. Fortunately for them and for us, a book in a school library is not one of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Ms. Carol Lockhart.
I'm Carol Lockhart. I live at 1202 Wakefield Road in Flowertown. I'm a 50-year resident of Springfield Township, and I taught for over 20 years at Springfield Township schools. And I'm the parent of a child who went all the way through Springfield schools. I came here tonight prepared to say some great things about Springfield schools because they really are great. But I see that the conversation has taken a different turn. So what I'd like to do is to say thank you to the school board. I think that in the past year, you've done a lot of thoughtful, thorough investigation of all the concerns that have come in front of you. And at each turn, you have acted in the best interest of the children. You also included the safety of the whole community. And that is an important concern because we have a lot of older citizens in our community. And what happens to the children can be spread to the other members of the community. Your thoughtful investigation of what is happening with the COVID-19 problem has helped the rest of us all be safe. I know that you have repeated this careful, thorough investigation for a lot of other issues that have come up. And I think it is a model for our community discussions in other areas to be concerned about what is true when you are speaking.
Ms. Lockard, just 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. When I was a teacher, we had a way of discussing when it was he said, she said, and we could not come to an agreement. We had to go to the facts to support our positions. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Mr. Jim Nally.
I don't have anything to say. I just want to take my mask off. Yes, several people have mentioned things and.
Excuse me, Mr. Nally, if you could just say your.
Oh, I'm
address
sorry.
for
I'm
the
sorry.
record.
Jim Nally. I live in Erdenheim. I've been there for a long time.
Thank you.
I'm not going to teach. I could talk about COVID. I could a lot of things or pornography, but I'm not going to. This has been something that's been. It's been a couple years. The modifications they did to the schools, and they moved this field to that field and this field to that field, so on and so forth. I asked the Board of Commissioners in a meeting before this started, because the newspapers and everything said, this is for the school, this is for the school, 14 million, whatever it was, this is for the school. Well, I said at the Board of Commissioners meeting, I said, who has the say in whether this gets done or not? And they said, you have no say in the matter. That's what they said to me. To be in the recent news, I'll say this thing. They were very unprofessional and unbusinesslike the way they did it. After the meeting, one of those people came up to me and they said to me, Jim, and I would never give this person's name, Jim, once the board decides we're going to do this, you have no say in the matter. That's what they told me. I've been paying taxes here a long time. That's what they told me. So then then they started this up, doing all the things they did. Now I'm speaking from, I've taught from grades kindergarten through graduate school. So I know education. And I want to know with what they've done with these fields, and they put this new road in and everything like this, since they claim that this was for the students, for education, how much has the grade level of reading and mathematics improved since this was done? How many books were bought? Nothing. Well, how the hell can you claim this is an educational event when you move fields around? Has nothing to do with, now somebody else, well, yeah, somebody up here, I heard this mentioned reading and writing 2 or 3 times. That's 2.5 hours. I heard reading and writing 3 times. This is education. Where is it? So I want to ask the question from an accounting perspective, because I have a background in that also. If there was federal, 30 seconds?
Yes, sir.
If there was federal money involved, you have to do accounting a different way. For instance, United, they spend their money, they do their books their own way. If there's a government contract in that, they have to do it a different way. I don't know if there was federal money in that or not, but was this defined as a property improvement or was it education, which benefits the students? If you take a new road and you move a field, that's like taking a psychiatrist's office and putting up flowers outside in the yard.
Mr. Nally, time is.
If you put them out in the yard, how does that do the patient in the office? What good does it do them? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up on the sign-up sheet was Mr. Jeff Cornu. Corman, C-O-R-N-E-W.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Cornell. I live on Surrey Road in New Orleans. I've commented several times at board meetings and recently met with Dr. Johnson about the need to make curricular resources available to parents. I'm hopeful that the administration is willing to make the information available in a timely manner. At the last board meeting, a new 5th grade social studies curriculum was approved. So one would expect that curriculum to be among the first shared since it was the most recently reviewed. My concern is that the district is being consumed by the current political and social movements that are sweeping the nation without any thought of possible adverse effects. For example, what will be the eventual impact of an entire generation of children who spent years involved in activities teaching them that they are either inherently bad or inherently disadvantaged based on the color of their skin? The district has recently brought in the Delaware Valley Consortium for Equity and Excellence, which actually I think I saw the director of that organization here tonight in the audience. But it's an organization affiliated with the University of Penn Graduate School of Education. How much money has to be spent on new race, gender, and social justice initiatives? How much is being spent on teacher training programs, consultants, and audits of the school for these purposes? It seems these types of consultants and programs are bringing an awful lot of funding. I have personally not seen or read any example of a similar program in a school district that has touted a dramatic increase in graduation rates and college acceptance, nor a dramatic decrease in violence and suicide since roughly 2009, when area schools began using them. I want the best for my children in their education, not a 13-year introduction into political activism recommended by a high-paid consultant. Thank you.
Our next signed up comment is, and I'm sorry on the pronunciation here, Mr. Stephen Heverns.
Stephen Hubbard, 1213 Bergen Road, and you nailed it. I've heard the commentary tonight, and I'll try and keep it brief. First, thank you for all that you guys do. Thank you for all the teachers and the librarians and what they do. What I have to say is that this and the current discourse around pornography or teaching of sex in schools and things like that takes me back to what I grew up through in the 80s, and the parents and getting up right about the music that we listened to or the other suggestive things and stuff that we were exposed to. I can say that what I learned and when I am teaching my daughter and when I see my daughter being taught in the schools is care, respect for others, empathy, and lots of those things that I wish I had, again, when I was younger. They're not being taught pornography. They can get these things outside of the school system. What they're being taught here is a safe and healthy learning environment. Thank you.
All right, we are going to move online, and next up is Ms. Erin May.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Erin May, live in Orland, Pennsylvania. I'd like to comment on the health safety for the athletes. A couple points I'd like to make, and I really appreciate your conversation and dialogue, especially with the opt-out for the athletes and families. A couple things it really greatly concerns me. I'm going to echo what a couple other people said, that I feel like our school's becoming a medical facility. I think there should be pause given to that. I appreciate the safety of our students, but again, I feel like there's great emphasis that's being put on school and not between a student, a family, and their physician. I think we're talking about a population of students that have a great amount of anxiety. I mean, going back to when we were in middle school, high school, pre-COVID, we all remember what it's like to be a 7th through 12th grade student. Okay, and I appreciate that there were students met with and saying that their dream is only to be able to play without masks. I think those students are, and no one, and everybody that I've spoken with, no one wants to be told that they're tested positive in front of their peers. These are athletes. No one wants the anxiety of going into some isolation room because they just prior to practice tested positive and they're letting their team down. The embarrassment, the anxiety that's going into even just this discussion from everybody that I've spoken to is at very, very high. And I think we're using the word normal. None of this is normal. I think there should be a great discussion, as you guys have discussed, of revisiting the opt-out program. My last point is if we're talking about swabbing these students and all the tests that's going on that they can play masks, then will they be able to attend school with no masks on after just being tested that they are not COVID positive? Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Knapp.
Next sign up is Mrs. R, and I'd like you to please give your full name and address. Okay, Mrs. R? Hi, we can hear you.
Hello? Okay, we can come back to her.
All right, next up is Mr. Joseph Alfonsi.
Hello, can you hear me? Joe Alfonsi, Redford Road. Just had, I guess we can't ask questions, but just wanted to put some stuff out there as a comment that maybe the board could get back to us on. I found that during the presentation about swabbing and then also in the follow-up dialogue right before the vote, that there still seems to be a lot of conversation that's left ahead. You yourselves, almost half of you had questions, and even during the presentation were opining on answers to things. One of them being that if there is a positive test on the rapid, that you'd be okay to it being followed up by a second rapid. And my question would be for the group to consider what happens then. So if it's negative, or is everything okay and the athlete keeps going on? And then also another thing to think about is if you do come up with a positive, would you accept a negative test from a medical facility of a much higher accurate test in order to override the, student not being able to be in school for 10 days? So I really would ask you all to look inside yourselves and think about the questions that you even proposed right before you voted. And even during the presentation, there were questions being brought rather than facts, data, science. I asked you to, remove the vote and go back and have more conversations. It's a good conversation. We all want the same things. We want safety for our children. But I think that the conversation, it was obvious as you were having it, obvious before you voted that it was not completed. And we need a complete conversation, a complete dialogue about something so important. A lot of this is about the emotional well-being of our children. And as the father of someone that's special needs in the district that has come home every day to me and asked me about this, is worried. That we're doing some damage. We have to be better. We have to think and approach this in a smarter way, a more scientific, data-driven way. So I ask you all to please take this back, continue on what you've already investigated on and where you're going, but complete the process. I think you're all people that have been in the business world or wherever you came from. This is not how you decide on a policy when there's this many questions. There needs to be more discussion and more data. So I wish you luck on that because it affects all of our children. And I hope you really listen to that. And I appreciate you listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Alfonso.
Next comment comes from Ms. Tracy Smith.
You have to promote her to panelist. Okay. She's muted. Tracy, you're muted.
There you go. How's that?
Thank you.
It didn't give it to me at first. Thank you. This is Tracy Smith from Pen Oak Road in Flowertown. Thanks again for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. I also want to say thank you for the dialogue that I saw take place amongst the board members tonight. That was really nice to see, because often I feel like there's not a lot of dialogue. So it was great just to have that, see that dialogue happening and lots of questions being asked. So I want to thank you for that as well. My children are athletes. They want to play, and they want to play unmasked. So I do, consider that in terms of all this. I do have, and maybe not a question that can be answered right now, but maybe moving forward, I just am curious to see how, with this new testing that sounds like it's going to be approved, and well, it has been approved and will move forward, that we could potentially be opening Pandora's box in terms of positive tests. And I'm kind of curious to see if we are going to revisit the options for kids that do have to isolate at home because potentially of a positive exposure, because we very well may see those numbers increase with additional testing or testing taking place. I can speak at the high school level, a kid that's in honors or an AP class being out of school 8-10 days, that's in essence with block scheduling being out almost a month of class. So I was kind of curious about that. And also too, I know that Mr. Payne had said at the middle school level that, kids would be tested during the school day. And I'm not sure what that was going to look like at the high school. But is there a way to have kids tested not during academic time, as we know that they often miss a lot of time from class to leave early for sporting events and things like that as well?
Thanks, Tracy, for those comments, and I know that they will take that under consideration. I see Dr. Yannicone shaking her head that we will minimize or try to eliminate the chance that students are out of class. And I don't know if you saw also in the presentation that Dr. Yannicone referred to the test to stay that we'd be looking at, which would allow students to not have to quarantine for a long period of time. Asymptomatic students who might have had a positive test, it would allow them to be in school, continue some testing to make sure that they continue to be negative and allow them to stay in school. So
okay, so that would be kids that did test positive. I wasn't sure if it was exposure. I did not completely understand that as well.
yeah, it's if they test positive but are asymptomatic. So, but there's more to come on that. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Tracy, I think she
You may have frozen out. All
froze
right.
out. I'm sorry about that, Tracy.
So we have our last hand, and again, it's Mrs. R. And if you could state your full name and where you live in the township.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Gotcha.
Okay, sorry. Technical difficulties over here. My name's Stephanie Rebstock. I live in Orland. I missed a part because I'm home with my kiddos. So I just I had a question, I guess, for Dr. Yannicone. She mentioned that in regard to the testing, that the teachers had a training on this process. Is that true?
Yes, the nurses have training. Dr. Yannicone, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, nurses, principals, athletic directors, and some of our coaches and our athletic trainers were trained on Friday.
Okay. So is that, I guess, considered like a professional development?
Yes, we had professional development half day on Friday afternoon.
Okay. So I guess a follow-up question, I guess to everyone, but I know Dr. Tartuski answered this. When someone questioned her about if the vote was casted or not, why are you spending professional development time and money on something that was not a definitive yet? You didn't cast your vote until just recently, just this evening. So why was there professional development for this?
I'm going to allow Dr. Yannicka to respond to that.
Sure.
I apologize, Mrs. R, I don't know what your last name,
Rebstock, sorry.
We are looking at test to stay as well as the potential for testing in theater and choral arts as well. We've had requests for testing in those areas. And we know that families are eager for us to provide an alternative for asymptomatic students who are deemed close contacts in school. So should the Office of Public Health authorize test to stay this month? It was authorized last month in Delaware County schools, for example, then we want to be ready. And so several weeks ago, I did submit the paperwork for us to be able to participate in test to stay if it is approved. And part of that was to have testers certified. So it was part of our planning for the future, whether or not it included athletes.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
All right, and that concludes all of the comments that we had tonight.
Thank you. So future meeting dates. There is an interim board meeting, which is today. There will be a regular board meeting held on November 16th, 2021. The reorganization and regular board meeting will be held on Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. And in terms of future committee meeting dates, there's a finance committee meeting on Thursday, November 11th, 2021 at 8 a.m. That's a virtual meeting. And policy committee meeting Thursday, December 2nd, 2021 at 8 a.m. That is also a virtual meeting, and that's a tentative time. I appreciate everyone's comments for this evening. I'm sorry, we have closed public comment period.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you did give your time to.
No, I signed up for both. That young lady helped me when I come in. She said, don't put it. Did you said put non-agenda? Okay. I don't, where's the other sheets?
Yeah,
Because
yeah. I had. What is your name? I'm sorry.
Michelle Chasadis. It was only on the agenda. It was only on the agenda sheet.
Yeah.
Michelle, you signed up on agenda items and you spoke about agenda items. Okay, I don't see that, huh?
She did, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you conceded, excuse me, I'm sorry, but you conceded your time so that Mrs. Trinkle could finish her comments. So you got 6 minutes of time. You got all 6 minutes of time. Okay, we're adjourning for this evening. Thank you.